Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My Karen Stepmom keeps taking my food. I teach her a valuable lesson. After that, half-brothers threatened to sue me over $16,000. It cost them $158,000 and possibly their parents' marriage. And after that, entitled dad walks out on kid during visitation because his job is more important to him. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen gets walked out on. I've been hoping you'd walk out for the past 12 years. So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My Karen stepmom keeps taking my food. I teach her a valuable lesson. My stepmom is a nutritionist. She's always about eating the right foods, meal prep, fresh groceries, etc. Occasionally, my dad, 52, male, my siblings, 21, female, 20, male, and 23, male, and I like to get some junk food. We call these junk ups on the weekend. Now the problem is, since forever, my stepmom has 1. Told us that we're going to die because we're eating fatty foods. I promise, we only eat junk food on the weekends or on special occasions. The last time I had anything unhealthy was my sister's birthday a few weeks ago. And 2. Comes in while we're eating with a plate for herself and picks the food she wants from each of our plates. Whenever me or one of my siblings questioned this, she would tell us, "You're being disrespectful. Shut up, I can eat what I want." Or, "It would be a waste of time to buy me one because I don't want one." I want to make it clear that she does not buy any of the food for our junk ups. Either I buy for everyone or one of my siblings does. Just yesterday, we decided to get burgers. This time, I bought food and one of my siblings said, "You know what, get mom one too, because you know she'll just pick off of our plates anyways." And my dad grumbled something about her not liking that, but I didn't care. I figured she would come around to us buying her a burger too. Perhaps she felt excluded, which was definitely not our intention. When we got home and set our plates to eat, in came my stepmom with her own plate, and before she could start picking, I put the wrapped burger on her plate and said, "Here you go, that one's all yours. No need to pick on our plates now." She was infuriated with me and screamed at my dad to do something about me and went on and on about how I was being disrespectful towards her and that I needed to learn to share and that I'm too old to be selfish. I just sat there, unwrapped my burger, and ate. My siblings later told me that maybe we shouldn't have done that because now my stepmom has been stewing about it for some time now. Am I the jerk? Edit. I went to do my laundry and nap, and when I came back, I saw that my post blew up. Thank you for your advice and the Reddit silver. To clarify some points made in the comments, with burgers or something that you can't easily take a piece of, my stepmom would come in with a knife and fork and cut into it to get herself a slice. Also, I don't know if she has any mental illness. I've never asked. I think once she calms down, we can talk. When we talk, I will update everyone. Thanks again. Speaking of burgers, who makes the best burgers? Please let us know. I'd do anything for some Wendy's right now. Half-brother threatens to sue me over $16,000. It cost him $158,000 and possibly their parents' marriage. When I, 25, female, was 3, my grandparents passed. They set up a savings account in my name. The account was meant to be accessed by me when I was 21. At that point, it contained just over $300,000. My grandparents left me a letter saying they would like me to share the money fairly with any other Smith-Jones kids, meaning my full siblings. Dad's a Smith, mom's is a Jones. By fairly, they meant that they wanted me to assess the situation and judge for myself what was fair. I never had full siblings, but I have 2 half-brothers, Mac and Joe Smith, who are dad and stepmom's kids. Due to the specific wording my grandparents used, I legally never had to give Mac or Joe any money. However, I see Mac and Joe as my brothers, and as the money came from our grandparents, I felt that the fairest thing would be to assign each of us $100K, so we all got an equal-sized lump sum. And I figured that when Mac, the youngest, turned 21 and took his $100K, we could split any remaining money. When I turned 21, Dad suggested I buy a house with my $100K. I found a place I loved, but it was $130 and I couldn't get a mortgage. So Dad said I should borrow $30K from the account. I did, figuring I could pay it back before my brothers turned 21, and I have been repaying it. The account should be at $208K right now, but due to me withdrawing and then repaying that money, it's at $195K, so I still owe $13K. Joe turned 21 recently, and as I was giving him his $100K, Joe noticed that there was less in the account than there should be. I explained and said I was going to put it all back before Mac, now 19, turns 21. Joe told Mac, and both boys said I stole from them and owed them the full $13K back plus $3,000 of interest that they felt they would have gotten, and they wanted it all paid by this summer, which gave me less than 6 months to bring the account up to 211. I said I'd do it, but over 2 years as planned. The boys then wrote up a contract to that effect. I went to sign it until I saw that it said 6 months to pay it all back. I wouldn't sign as we agreed on 2 years. They said I should figure it out as they were entitled to that money and would be seeking legal advice. Later that day, I got an email, clearly written by them, saying that they intend to sue me for the $16,000, plus whatever is currently in the account, and additional damages and emotional distress on top of that. At this point in time, I'd given Joe about $50K out of his $100K because he wanted it in installments. I responded that legally, they were never entitled to any of it, and given their attitudes, I'd say they've already received an amount I deem fair, so that $50K was all they were getting. I then got a barrage of texts, calls, and emails yelling at me for going back on our deal. I blocked them. They then took to social media saying that I was trying to do them out of their inheritance and rallying our extended family into harassing me over this, and it mostly worked as a lot of people messaged me. However, I got a message from this guy called Chris Smith. Chris said he was 27 and claimed to be my half-brother. I had never met him before, but he sent me photos of him as a kid with our dad, grandparents, and me. He showed me that he also had an account with $150K in it and a scan of a letter from our grandparents saying this money was meant to be shared fairly among Dad's illegitimate kids. Chris also told me that we have another half-sibling who is 18. He's been looking for me for a while, but only found me when Dad shared Joe's post, which had me tagged. We checked with the solicitor to make sure, and as the boys are legitimate, they aren't entitled to anything in Chris's illegitimate kid fund. And as they are my half-siblings, they aren't entitled to anything in my Smith-Jones Kids Fund either. I sent the boys a letter formally telling them to back off, stop posting about me online, and enjoy the $50K because it's all they're getting. The day they received the letter, Chris got a PM from Dad asking if the boys can have some of Chris's fund. Chris also said no and told Dad we had met. I told Mac and Joe about Chris and our other half-sibling with Chris's permission. So it looks like my grandparents, knowing about Chris before they passed, set up 2 funds. One for the kids Dad had with my mother, who was still his wife when they passed, and one for kids born out of Dad's affairs, presumably to make sure no one tried to do anyone else out of hurt feelings. I'm getting a lot of crap, but holding firm on my decision. The boys have realized that I won't back down on this, and it sounds like I've caused a schism at their house, as Joe has all the money and no intention of sharing, so Mac is now feeling twice as done over. Plus, Stepmom apparently did not know about the other half-siblings, or that my half-sister was born after she and my dad got married, and she's made Dad move into a hotel. It sounds like Dad is looking for a long-term living arrangement outside of the family home, because it looks like she's not letting him move back in. Dad is begging me to reconsider, but honestly, I'm done with all of them except Chris and my sister. Entitled Dad walks out on kid during visitation because his job is more important to him. So this happened when I was recently divorced from my first husband, and I only had my older son. My ex didn't want overnight custody because he worked 7 days a week, often 12 to 16 hours per day, but he had open visitation on weekends where as long as he gave me 2-hour notice, he could come out and take our son for 4 to 6 hours. At the time of this story, our son was 4. So generally, my ex would come out on Sunday because that was his quietest day at work and the day he was least likely to get called into work. He was the lead network admin with a major local manufacturer at the time. He'd show up around lunch and take our son into the mall, and they would go to Borders and pick out a book or a toy, and then go to McDonald's and eat and go in the play area for a bit. The first time this happened was at McDonald's. My ex lives about 60 miles from me, and the McDonald's is about 20 miles from my house, 40 miles from his, and close to 80 miles from where he works. He has a crazy long commute. They were in the play area, and he got a call that there was an emergency at work and he needed to come in right away. Rather than bringing our son home and then going into work, he called me up and told me he had to go to work immediately and for me to come and pick up our son. I thought he meant he would wait there until I arrived, but no. When I got there, he was long gone and our son was still in the play area all by himself. Anyone could have figured out he was alone and grabbed him or called the cops. I was absolutely furious at my ex. But hey, that's why he's my ex, right? So after this incident happened, I took him back to family court and petitioned for him to have supervised visitation only. It was granted, but lucky me, the court decided that since my ex and I were still on good terms, I had to be the supervisor. This isn't uncommon in my state. And I didn't want to be one of those jerky ex-wives that won't let the father see the kids, so I agreed to it for my son's sake. So he would pick both of us up and take us to Borders and out to eat, just like he had done when it was just him and our son. And then the same thing happened again. We were all at Borders, and my ex was wandering through the store while my son and I were in the kids section. We had arranged a time to meet and leave, and I went looking for him and couldn't find him anywhere. I thought he was probably in the restroom or something, so I called his cell phone, only to find out he had been called into work again and left without even telling us he was leaving. I had to call my parents 40 miles away to come and get us and take us home. I thought my dad was going to hurt my ex when he found out what he had done. Heck, I wanted to myself. I went off on my ex big time and told him I wasn't going to put up with it anymore, and if he wanted to see our son, he'd just have to come to our house and stay there with him for a few hours every weekend. The court backed me up on this one, and the judge laid into him over taking off on us again. Especially when it came out in court that half the time my ex had had my son, he had just dumped him with my ex-in-laws and gone to work, so he wasn't even the one with him during visitation. And my son told me that my ex-mother-in-law was being horrible and refusing to feed him while he was at her house. That was pretty much the end of visitation. I'm since remarried, I have a younger son with my second husband, and my ex hasn't shown his face since 2010, of his own choice. He's now remarried, and they have a 7-year-old son that my son hasn't even met. His new wife doesn't want him to have anything to do with our son, so as far as he's concerned, the heck with us. And as far as I'm concerned, we're better off without him. Poetic justice, though, is that since our son is on the spectrum, my ex has to pay child support on him until he's 24, which is the longest it can go in my state. And considering he makes high 6 figures now, it's a hefty sum of money I'm sure the second wife isn't happy about losing. You're invited to a pity party for all the guests who file fake complaints to corporate. Our corporate overlords require that we have a splash page that guests have to use a password to sign on to after connecting to the network. For whatever reason, this splash page just doesn't want to load on some devices, so I'm fairly used to tech-befuddled guests needing assistance getting onto the network, and I'm always more than happy to have them come to the desk so I can do it for them. One guy had called the desk complaining that he could not get onto the Wi-Fi network at all and was very frustrated because he has important work he needs to get done for his job. Like usual, I tell him I'd be happy to get it all set up for him if he'd like to bring his device to the desk. He comes down with an ancient brick of a laptop that has blue screened with a message along the lines of, "Something has gone wrong and your computer needs to restart." I try to restart it and it just literally will not boot, giving only some sort of runtime error message. Going well and beyond any duties I am obligated to perform, I did some basic troubleshooting and was at the very least trying to get the thing to boot for the guy. Probably spent at least half an hour working with it because it was slow and not much else was going on. Alas, no war was won with that old beast, and it just wasn't getting anywhere productive. The guy looked frustrated, but thanked me and went back to his room. No less than an hour later, I receive a customer service complaint through corporate. It's from the guest, and the complaint detailed that the hotel advertises having free Wi-Fi, but it has no internet connection at all available to guests. The front desk staff is incompetent and unhelpful and didn't care at all when he told them he needed internet connection for important work. He expects to be fully compensated for this stay, and they need better qualified staff. Oh heck no. It takes quite a lot to get me fired up after so many years in this business, but that right there made me furious. I immediately contact our customer service department and explain what actually had happened, and they advised me to try and work with the guest directly for a resolution, which at that point, I was all too happy to confront him directly about it. Because clearly the man didn't realize that when he files a complaint like that, it comes right back to us, and I just happened to be the sole person in charge of handling our customer service complaints. I called the guest's room and referenced the just made complaint and asked him how he would like me to better try and help him resolve his issue, assuring him that we very much do have proper internet connection here for all of our guests. The guy backpedaled so hard there could have been smoke. Straight out denied that he had made any kind of complaint and there was no problem. Everything was fine. Must have been some kind of misunderstanding. Of course. I call our GM hotline back and explain that the guest had denied making the complaint entirely, to which they then informed me that he had called back and said it was a misunderstanding and that the case had been closed. Nice try, guy with your busted up laptop that had to have been at least 8 years old. Have you ever had a fake complaint filed against you? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know. I used to file those all the time until I went to that Karen's retreat. Am I the jerk for making my boyfriend pay half the rent? I'm 27, female, and make about $130K. $30K of that being from a side hustle. My boyfriend of 2.5 years is 28, male, and makes $80K, no side hustle. I'm really serious about saving and only spend about $2,500 a month, $1,600 of that being in rent. Occasionally, I do something expensive and fun, like a week-long cruise I went on with friends before lockdown, but I don't eat out more than once a month. I buy clothes maybe once every other year, and my car is almost old enough to vote. My boyfriend is different. He does have an emergency fund and saves 10% of his salary in his company 401k and gets a 4% employer match. But that's it. Everything that comes in goes out. He eats out every day, leases an expensive car, and is always buying things. I don't know where his money goes, and to be honest, I don't think he does either. I don't love his spending habits, but I'm okay with it. Saving 10% is more than a lot of people do, and he doesn't have any credit card debt, so whatever. The issue is that he's supposed to be moving into my apartment next month. He currently lives in a house with 3 other guys and pays $800 a month. If we split the rent on my apartment, he would still pay $800 a month. I think that's more than fair, but he wants to pay $600 and me pay $1,000. His argument is that I make a lot more money than him and expenses should be proportional. And he also says it's not fair that my rent is going to decrease by 50% and his is going to stay the same. I don't agree, because I don't think what rent we paid before we lived together really has anything to do with the fairness of the arrangement, and he can clearly afford $800 a month since he's already been paying it. I would feel differently if he really would struggle to pay half the rent, but it's 12% of his salary. Come on. My flat salary is also only $20K more than his. The reason I make so much more is because I sometimes work nights and weekends. He could make extra money doing that too, but chooses not to. I don't really see why I should be punished for it. I told him I would be willing to compensate with a 700-900 split on the condition that he took the $100 he was saving and put it aside into a fund for us to buy a house one day, and that money would be his to do whatever he wanted if we ended up breaking up. He got mad and said I was treating him like a kid, that his finances are none of my business, and it's totally inappropriate for me to tell him what to do with his money. I feel like I can't see this situation clearly. Am I the jerk? Update. I told my boyfriend we needed to talk and went over to his house. I wrote down some of the more salient pieces of advice I had gotten here and basically just told him that I felt like him wanting me to contribute more to rent while also saying his finances were none of my business suggested he has a real what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine attitude, and that it makes me uncomfortable. I said that it wasn't really just about an additional $200 a month, it was about how he just mindlessly spent all his money, and it seemed like his emergency plan was to just rely on me for everything. I brought up how he couldn't even afford his dog's surgery and I had to pay, and that should have been a wake-up call, but it wasn't. We got into an argument where he basically said he works hard and has a good job, so he deserves nice things and to be able to go out whenever he wants. It made my heart sink to hear him say that, because I feel the exact opposite, that when you work hard and have a good job, the thing you deserve is financial security. I knew I wasn't going to change his entire outlook on money, so I just tried to focus on more concrete things. I said that if he lost his job, I would be able to support him while he looked for something else, but he didn't offer me the same security, and that if we eventually wanted to buy a house, I'd be forced to pay the entire down payment myself, and that he wouldn't even be able to contribute much monthly since he'd continue to blow a bunch of money on stuff he doesn't need or really even want. I said that dating him felt more like having a liability than a partner, and that him wanting me to pay an extra $200 a month in rent so he'd have more spending money is what really made me realize how unhappy I am with our situation. We argued some more. I could tell he saw my point of view, but was also understandably feeling pretty defensive. I eventually just told him that I wasn't comfortable with him moving in right now, and if he wanted to keep dating me, then we were going to have a frank talk about finances. He doesn't have to live the way I do, but he does have to meet me in the middle. I said I wanted to see him saving $500 a month and for him to only eat out 3 times a week, and that I'd work with him on creating a budget that worked for him. He's never budgeted before. I said I understand if he didn't want to compromise with me on this, but it's a deal breaker for me, and I need someone who's going to be more responsible with their spending. He said he'd think about it, and I left. Feeling kind of drained by this whole thing, and I've made peace with the fact that this relationship might be ending. Well, who do you agree with? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. Financial disagreements are one of the leading causes of divorce. Good thing Reddit boy and I agreed to eat ramen every day. Ramen. Am I the jerk for asking my girlfriend to throw out her ex's things? I, 30 male, have been in a relationship with my girlfriend, 29 female, for 18 months. Things are starting to get serious where we have discussed the possibility of me moving into her house. Prior to me, she was in a serious relationship for 9 years with her high school sweetheart. Together, they had 4 kids, now aged 10, 8-year-old twins, and a 5-year-old. Sadly, their dad passed 3 years ago. Now, I've met her kids. I've stayed the night at their home. She's asked me to watch them here and there so she could run errands or do her weekly hourly driving lesson prior to the UK's 3rd lockdown. Her kids are great. We go on family day outs together, and I feel that they have accepted me, and I'm growing to love them a lot. However, there is something that I find very uncomfortable. She still has a lot of her ex's things laying around. She has a framed poster of his favorite football team hanging on her bedroom wall, and she hates football. She has pictures of him and her and their kids hanging on her walls in her hallways and her lounge. She has his t-shirts folded in a box in her wardrobe. The other day, I found a half-empty bottle of men's shower gel at the back of her bathroom cupboard, and it isn't a brand I like to use. When I asked my girlfriend why she still had all of his stuff in the house, she got a bit defensive. She stated that having the pictures hanging up reminds her kids and her of their times together before they lost him. Having his clothes in a box is purely so the kids can smell his scent if they miss their dad and they can hug his shirt instead. I told her it made me very uncomfortable having all these little reminders of a dead man in my face, and if I were to move in with her, then I would need all of that stuff gone. She got upset, started crying, and said that she couldn't just erase those parts of her life, and the home she has with her kids was her home with him. But here's where I may be the jerk. I got a bit irritated with her and said that I don't feel like she's willing to compromise and consider my feelings, that I felt like she was comparing me to a ghost and that she might not truly love me by not considering it. She hasn't spoken to me properly in 3 days. So, am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Dumb neighborhood kids didn't listen and blamed us for what happened. So my family and I got a new Labrador puppy in March after my other dog passed away. So my dog is very playful, runs around, and when he meets new people, he gets very excited since he is only half a year old and still basically a puppy. So today, my family and I were getting ready to visit our cousins when we heard some kids laughing. We looked out the window and saw a couple of kids, maybe 6 to 8 years old, petting our dog through the fence. It was no problem since my dog was inside our yard. We have the gate locked so he doesn't get out on the road and possibly get hit by a car, but the key is always in the gate door so anyone can just unlock it and come in. We told them just to not open the gate so he doesn't get out onto the road. They left and we continued getting ready. When we came back from our cousins, my grandma told us that those girls had come back, opened the gate, and obviously started running as they didn't know how to deal with a very playful and excited dog. One of the girls ran onto the road and my dog followed her onto that road, a road which has at least 5 cars passing by every minute. My grandma immediately reacted and told the girls to get out of the road and into the yard so my dog would follow her. She did just that and everything was fine. And then the next thing they did was just run away like nothing happened. No apology, no nothing. The next day they were passing by our house and saw my dad and started complaining to him that the dog bit her on her hand, and when my dad asked where the mark was, she said it had already healed. 1 day of time, and blamed us for the incident, and their mom apparently wanted to call the police, but in the end she didn't. Now here is why this was a horrible situation. A. They trespassed onto our land. B. They opened our gate that was locked for a reason, even after we told them not to. C. They ran onto a busy road, so either the girl or my dog could have gotten hurt. As much as I wouldn't care if one of those idiots got hurt, my family would be charged because our dog chased them. Wasn't even attacking, just wanted to play. D. They wanted to get us in trouble for their dumb actions. So yeah, they learned it the hard way. I don't know if this story even fits this subreddit, but I just had to write down how angry I am. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my half-brother use the land I inherited as a venue for his wedding? I, male 36, got married in 2017. My wife and I are not rich. We couldn't afford a fancy wedding. My dad hosted my wedding at his house. Mom and dad got divorced. I lived with my stepdad and half-brother for years. We didn't invite a lot of people. Again, we couldn't afford a huge menu and more chairs and tables. My mom insisted that I invite my stepdad and half-brother, and we did. Everyone was happy and excited for us except my stepdad and half-brother. My half-brother openly made comments about the tables and chairs and made fun of my cheap suit and wife's wedding dress, complained that the food was ordered from a crappy restaurant, while his dad was laughing out loud from behind. My in-laws were literally staring as he basically called my wedding a joke, not to mention trash-talking my dad and saying that he was living in filth and the backyard was in fact a dumpster. I was so mad. My wife looked so upset and we both were so embarrassed because he and his dad were laughing and being rude. My mom did nothing. I tried to be civil, but at that point the wedding was already ruined. I cut contact with both after they made my wedding a crap show. Mom said I overreacted and defended them, saying that they were probably drunk. My dad was hurt as they openly offended him in his house. Unfortunately, my dad passed 1 year later. It was a lot for me to take. Neither my stepdad nor half-brother showed up to the funeral, and I don't know why I'm not surprised. I inherited a piece of land from my dad that I put money on and made it a nice place for family get-togethers. Dad's family, to be specific. My half-brother is getting married soon. My mom showed him pictures of my land, and he suggested using it as a venue for his wedding. My mom called and told me to visit. I went to see her, and I saw my half-brother there along with stepdad. I was already leaving when he asked me to use the land I inherited from my dad as a venue for his wedding. He went on about what decorations he was going to use. He said his fiancée saw the pictures and liked it a lot. I told them no. My mom told me to stop being rude and sit down and talk like an adult. I told them no. I won't be letting him use my property after what he did. My mom defended him, saying he didn't mean it and was just messing around. He ruined a once-in-a-lifetime event for me and didn't care. I still refused. I got into an argument with them and I left after I was called bitter. My mom never stopped texting me, telling me to help out my brother. She shamed me and called me selfish. She's now reaching out to my wife, telling her to convince me to agree. I was surprised his aunts are wanting to talk to me about it as well. What do you think? Should OP let his stepbrother use his land or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for overruling my husband's veto and inviting my mom to stay with us for 3 weeks after our baby is born? I'm currently 6 months pregnant with my first baby. My husband and I have been married for 3 years and have a happy marriage overall. With our baby coming in about 3.5 months, we're both nervous and excited as any new parents would be. We're reading books, watching YouTube videos, just trying to get an idea of what to do, because the most experience we have is holding and playing with babies for about 10 minutes at a time and then handing them back to their parents when they cry. The part I'm most nervous about is how awful the first month or so is going to be. My doctor says that I'm likely going to be scheduled C-section because of some health issues. I can't even begin to imagine how rough it's going to be. Recovering from a major surgery, recovering from labor and delivery, sleepless nights with a crying newborn, changing diapers, feeding, pumping, hormones all over the place, etc. All for the very first time. I get awful headaches when I get less than 6 hours of sleep. I can't even imagine how bad it'll be in the first month. After the doctor told me that I'm likely to be a scheduled C-section, I told my husband we absolutely need outside help at first. My husband was sort of against this idea. He said he would take on the bulk of the work. I know my husband. He's very responsible and follows through on his word, but he doesn't know babies. Neither do I. It's not like this is our third kid and we know what we're doing. We don't. I called my mom, who lives 2 hours away, and gave her the general updates. I told her I needed help. For reference, my mom is the nicest person on the planet. Yes, my husband and my mom get along well and loves being a mom and grandma. She proposed this. Yes, I can come out. Here's what I think would be best. You and your husband watch the baby in the daytime. You focused on feeding, pumping, and recovering from surgery. Your husband can focus on keeping the house in order and changing diapers, putting the baby to sleep, etc. And then I'll do the nighttime duty. I'll slowly switch my sleep schedule so I can be awake at night, and hopefully if you're pumping enough, I can just feed the baby at night, so at least you both will get a full night of sleep. This was heaven sent to me. I told her I needed to talk to husband, but 99% yes, and oh my god, thank you so much, I love you, mom. Fast forward to today. It's been a week of back and forth on this. We've had rational discussions. We've yelled. We've tried everything, but neither will budge. My husband insists that having a third adult is suffocating, and trust me, I'll take care of the baby for everything besides feeding. That's all you gotta do. But I feel like he's being really naive, and I'll have to deal with the fallout. So yesterday, I said forget it, and told my mom yes. Obviously, this led to a fight with my husband, who's upset because he clearly said no, but I went through with it anyways. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is her husband? Please let us know. Remember the time my mom stayed with us for 3 weeks? Yes, Karen. Unfortunately, I do. You definitely haven't seen this video yet, so please come watch it next and we'll see you when you get there. And support our coffee addiction by joining as a channel member today, and we'll give you a special shout out in our next video. And to have us make any kind of video you'd like us to, just come visit us on Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.